The Frozen Heart, the Snow Queen's spell and Gerda's journey once upon a time. In a land where the winters were long and the snowflakes glittered like diamonds, there lived an evil troll. This troll was not like any ordinary troll. He delighted in making people miserable and in distorting the beauty of the world. One day, he crafted a magical mirror, an awful creation. This mirror had a terrible power. It made everything good and beautiful appear ugly and twisted. Flowers looked wilted, and happy people seemed sad. Worst of all, if a person looked into this mirror, they would only see the bad in everything. One day, the troll, full of wicked glee, took his mirror high up into the sky. But as he climbed higher and higher, a terrible accident happened. The mirror slipped from his grasp and shattered into a million tiny pieces. These shards of glass scattered across the world, carried by the wind to the farthest corners of the earth. Some of the splinters were so small they were invisible, but wherever they landed, they caused great harm. If a piece of the mirror landed in someone's eye, that person would only see the bad and ugly things in life. And if a shard pierced someone's heart, their heart would freeze and turn to ice, making them cold and unfeeling. Far below, in a busy town, lived two children named Kay and Gerda. Kay and Gerda were the best of friends. They lived in houses across from each other, and every day they would play together in their gardens, which were full of beautiful roses. They would listen to their grandmother's stories and dream of far-off places. One of their favorite stories was about the mysterious Snow Queen, a beautiful yet icy figure who rode on the wind and made everything around her freeze. One day, as they sat in the garden, Kay suddenly felt a sharp pain in his eye and his heart. He didn't know it, but two tiny splinters from the evil troll's mirror had pierced him, one in his eye and the other in his heart. From that moment, everything changed. Kay no longer found joy in the roses he once loved. He said harsh things to Gerda and everyone around him. He even broke the roses they had so carefully tended together. His heart had turned cold, and he could no longer see the beauty in the world. Then, one snowy afternoon, Kay took his little sled to the town square. As he played, he saw a magnificent white sleigh driven by a mysterious figure. Curious, he tied his sled to the large sleigh, hoping for a fun ride. But as the sleigh sped through the streets and out into the wilderness, Kay began to regret his decision. The snowstorm grew heavier, and soon he couldn't see anything around him. Every time he tried to free his sled, the person driving the sleigh would nod, and Kay would stay put, feeling strangely compelled to continue. Eventually, the sleigh stopped, and the driver revealed herself. It was the Snow Queen. She was as beautiful as the stories had described, but her beauty was cold, like the winter winds. She invited Kay to sit next to her, and when she kissed him on the forehead, a chill like nothing he had ever felt swept through him. But in that instant, he no longer felt the cold or the fear. He forgot everything, Gerda, his home, and his life in the town. Back in the city, Gerda was heartbroken. Kay had disappeared, and no one knew where he had gone. She searched and searched, but Kay was nowhere to be found. Day after day, she cried for her lost friend, and as the seasons changed, her sadness grew deeper. But when spring finally came, Gerda made a brave decision. She would find Kay, no matter how far she had to go. She set off on a journey, hoping to bring him home. First, Gerda went to the river, thinking it might know where Kay had gone. She spoke to the river, but the water only flowed silently past. Next, she found herself in the garden of an old woman who had a magical way with flowers. The woman welcomed Gerda and invited her to stay. But secretly, the woman cast a spell on Gerda, making her forget her mission to find Kay. For a time, Gerda lived happily in the flower garden, but soon her memories of Kay began to return, and she realized she had to leave. With a heavy heart, she escaped the garden and continued her journey, now in the middle of autumn. She had been searching for Kay for so long, and the days had grown shorter and colder. One winter's day, Gerda met a crow who told her about a boy living in a grand palace. The crow believed this boy might be Kay. With the help of a friendly palace crow, Gerda snuck into the palace to find the prince. Her heart leaped when she saw a boy lying in bed, but when he turned to face her, she realized with disappointment that it wasn't Kay. The prince and princess, seeing Gerda's sorrow, took pity on her. They gave her warm clothes and a small carriage to help her continue her search. For many days, Gerda traveled, hoping to find Kay. But her journey was full of dangers. One day, robbers attacked her carriage and took her captive. The robber girl, a wild child with kind eyes, took a liking to Gerda. She decided to help her instead of keeping her captive. In the robber's den, Gerda met two pigeons and a reindeer. The pigeons told her they had seen Kay with the Snow Queen, and the reindeer knew the way to her icy palace in Lapland. The robber girl, feeling sympathy for Gerda's quest, set her free and gave her the reindeer to take her to the Snow Queen's palace. Gerda and the reindeer journeyed far, through snow-covered landscapes and under the dancing lights of the northern lights. Eventually, they reached a small house where a wise Lapland woman lived. She gave them a message written on a stick to take to a Finnish woman further north. After another long journey, they arrived at the Finnish woman's house. She could perform magic, but she told Gerda that no magic was needed to save Kay. Gerda's love and determination were all the power she needed. At the Snow Queen's palace, Kay sat alone, trying to solve an impossible puzzle. The Snow Queen had told him that if he could arrange the blocks of ice to spell the word eternity, he would be free. But no matter how hard he tried, the answer eluded him. His heart, still frozen, made him numb to everything around him. Suddenly, Gerda burst into the palace. She saw Kay, but he didn't recognize her. She threw her arms around him and cried. Her tears, warm and full of love, fell onto his chest and melted the ice that had encased his heart. As his heart thawed, the shard of the evil mirror fell away. Kay began to cry as well, and the piece of glass in his eye was washed away. He looked at Gerda and finally recognized her. Together, they solved the Snow Queen's puzzle and escaped the icy palace. On their journey home, they were helped by everyone who had aided Gerda in her quest. Finally, after a long and difficult journey, they returned to their city. But something had changed. Kay and Gerda had grown up. Though their bodies were now older, in their hearts, they were still the same two children who had once played in the garden among the roses.